People are so sick to death of the Tories.
It's a lot of promises, isn't it? And you're always questioning, okay, that's great, but how are you going to do that? What does that look like?
When my young people speak about Keir Starmer, they think he doesn't come across that well. He seems quite posh.
I don't think it's a question of what if we'll win, rather how much we'll win by.
So I'm here in Liverpool for the Labour Party conference. It's been quite the year for the Conservative Party, and Labour might be thinking they're going to get an easy ride after everything that's happened. However, you can't win people over just by criticising opposition. I want to know how Labour's going to tackle the cost of living crisis. What even does a Labour government look like after more than 12 years of the Conservatives in power? And what even is happening about climate change? Let's find out, shall we? So what would you say is the biggest issue within British politics right now?
Well, the biggest issue is definitely the cost of living.
It's a cost of living.
The cost of living.
Yeah.
Cost of living has got to be the biggest issue in British politics.
It feels like everything's falling apart, everything. And then people are going to the shops, prices are going up, people can't afford. So like, kids are going to school with empty packed lunch boxes. I mean, like, it's just not acceptable.
What would you say are like the biggest issues facing young people at the moment?
Well, for me personally, I'd have to say again the climate crisis. A recent study shows that more than 45% of young people surveyed said their feelings about the climate crisis negatively impacted their daily life and functioning.
I think the kind of temptation as a young person is to say the environment's our biggest issue, but it's not that simple. You know, the housing crisis is a big issue for us. University tuition fees are a big issue for us. The mess that our economy is in is a big issue for us.
I think a lot of governments, no matter whether you're Labour, Conservative, I think both need to work on getting youth engagement and really having that as a focus, because that is the next generation.
Wow, this is very exciting.
But I'd say there's sort of a weird atmosphere because there's a buzz, I think, because people think Labour Party's doing well in the polls and they think they've got their act together a bit more. It's a bit more sort of smart and professional than maybe in the Jeremy Corbyn years. But there's obviously a sort of weird atmosphere, people worried about what's happening in the economy. You know, and for a political party, it's a weird thing. On the one hand, they can be pleased that the Tories are making such a hash of it, apparently, according to the markets. So that's probably quite good for them. But it's also terrible for the country. I think people are genuinely worried about what's happening.
What's it going to take for Labour to win the next election?
Well, it doesn't look like much at the moment because the Tories are completely messing up. They're destroying the economy. I think Labour could win without really doing anything. But of course, that's not what we want to do. And hopefully Keir will set out a plan and a vision for the country that will inspire people.
Do you think Keir Starmer's the man to do that, if they try to win?
Yes, of course. I think he's the only man to do that at this moment.
The guy's fought for years for people. You don't do that if you don't care. He clearly cares, he's clearly compassionate, but also he gets stuff done.
When I finally got involved in party politics, it was under Jeremy Corbyn's Labour, that's fact. But I think Keir Starmer is starting to understand how to engage young people. When my young people speak about Keir Starmer, they think he doesn't come across that well. He seems quite posh. But hearing him speak in person is completely different.
We have to look at what Corbyn did, and at the end of the day, he didn't win. And that is a betrayal for young people, because what young people need more than anything else is a Labour government.
There was a bit of a difference in agreement between Andy Burnham and Keir Starmer yesterday. Is this a divided Labour or a united Labour?
Oh, absolutely not. I think conference is the time for us to have policy discussions. That's why we're all here. You know, we all sit in fringe events, we discuss policy, we have differences. But at the end of the day, when we're making our speeches, we're all up there, we're all loving. We all love it. It's really great to see. So it's definitely a more united Labour.
The Labour Party is totally united. And we are all behind our new leader, Keir Starmer, for the last 2 years. I think he's a great job. And watch this space and repeat me what I just said. And after next year's election, Keir Starmer will be in number 10.
Thank you.
You've got to take one of these bananas.
Oh, go on. Do you feel as though you've had more questions answered or more questions left unanswered?
I think there are still questions for this party to answer. For example, there are trade unionists here who say that Keir Starmer can't just go on saying, I'm keeping out of public sector pay disputes, especially when you've got Ed Miliband sitting next to him saying Labour does have to say we should have inflation matching pay deals for the public sector. Those things don't quite square up. And maybe a bigger question, it's not clear how Labour's going to pay for these promises. When they promise to improve public services, to give us enough nurses and enough teachers and enough doctors, where's the money coming from? I mean, earlier on, Rachel Reeves is saying that we won't have this hike in the top rate of tax, and that's going to pay for nurses. Look, last Thursday, that money was already in the Treasury. It may be a good line in a press release, but it frankly doesn't cut it.
From what Labour's proposing, sustainability and tackling climate change is quite a big part of their manifesto. What do you think about that? Do you think that's better than what the Conservatives are currently offering?
I think it's a fantastic ambition. Whether realistic or not, I don't know. I know that Keir Starmer is talking about wind and solar a lot of the time, but unfortunately that is not going to get rid of the gas and the coal and fossil fuel. You need a baseload renewable power to be able to do that. And if the Labour government are not in power for another 2 years, that's 2 years off the target to 2030. Of course, the Conservatives are saying 2035. Again, the target is hugely ambitious if you haven't got a renewable baseload power system source to take the place of gas and coal.
In the long term, if we don't address climate change, there won't be a cost of living crisis because there won't be us. Well, I mean, not extinction, but, things would get much worse than people realize, I think. I do definitely think that you can address both simultaneously. I think that there are measures that the government can take to support ordinary people as well as small businesses to get through this cost of living crisis. And I do not think that blaming the green energy and the green levies that have been implemented to try to decarbonise the economy is the correct response to the cost of living crisis.
Coming into the conference, I'd been speaking to people who work for Keir Starmer and some of the shadow cabinet, and there was this sort of slight sense of we're entering what they called the sort of Starmer 3.0, the third phase of Keir Starmer. First one was sort of get his leadership underway, then sort of sort the party out, and now it's to sort of sort the country out. It's not totally clear that there's a big sort of coherent plan. I was going to say radical, but then maybe they don't want, maybe the country doesn't want radical. Actually, the sort of slightly boring Keir Starmer thing might be appealing.
It's a lot of promises, isn't it? And you're always questioning, okay, that's great, but how are you going to do that? What does that look like? We know he understands what the issues are, but really, you say you're going to do this, but maybe actually tell people how you're going to do it.
Keir Starmer has just spoken. What are your thoughts?
Honestly, I thought it was the best speech of Labour leaders delivered in about a decade. It spoke to the country, was really hopeful. I thought it was like a common sense as well as a revolutionary approach to governing the country. I thought it was fantastic.
From the people I've been speaking to, there's such an overwhelming sense of positivity for the future and the potential for Labour to win the next election. But my question is, obviously this is just a tiny bubble of the population that's here. So how are you going to try and convey this message to the rest of the population who've become disengaged and just lost trust in politics in general after everything that's happened in the last year?
Well, look, I think that's right. And I think one of the key things that Keir said, and he said it almost as a throwaway in the speech, didn't he? When he said, and actually, we'll show people that you can govern with integrity again. And that's necessary. And I think the sincerity with which he said that was really important.
Especially after everything that's happened in the last year, actions speak louder than words. People are fed up with being told one thing and then seeing another thing being done. How do you think that you can convey that you're actually gonna meet what you're saying? Do you know what I mean? Sorry, it's a bit of a ramble.
I think what we need to do is we need to get out our manifesto in 1997, in 2005. Or was it 2003, 2005? Let's get our manifestos and we need to show the list of every policy that we said we'd do, and then we need to show the tick boxes to show, guess what, we delivered. And whether that was rebuilding schools in poor areas, whether that was shrinking class sizes so kids could learn, whether that was making sure if you've got cancer, you get your test back within 6 weeks, whether that is you get your doctor's appointment within 48 hours. We promised all these things and we did them. So for me, that shows when we're in government, we deliver.
I think the Conservative Party conference next week is going to be very difficult for the Conservatives, whatever happened or didn't happen here. This time, it's Liz Truss. This time, the party members seem almost a split as the members of Parliament. She got in on a pretty narrow mandate to become party leader on the votes of party members. What's going to be the mood in Birmingham as the party looks down tanking opinion poll ratings, as the inflation rate goes through the roof, as the cost of borrowing looks like following the same way as soon as the Bank of England sits down in the same room together? What have they got to cheer about? So I'm just wondering how she plays that, Liz Truss. She is not used to this. She's had no experience of dealing with an economic crisis like this, which is now a political crisis, and with a party which is going to be, well, who knows how restless, even rebellious. I can't wait to get there.
Me too. Thank you. From the people I've spoken to, there's an overwhelming sense that Labour has what it takes to win the next election, and that Keir Starmer is the man to do that. But there's also a lot of concerns and questions about the cost of living crisis, both in terms of short-term relief and longer-term solutions. And while the overall mood here is very positive, does this reflect the feelings of the rest of the nation? I guess we'll have to see how this compares to the Conservative Party conference coming up. Has anything surprised you?
Not really. I've been coming to these things for so long. So much of my life has been wasted in rooms like this with no windows and a croaky voice. Yeah.
Don't worry, I'm in the same boat as well. So
what do you mean? How many of these have you done?
As in, sorry, I've got a croaky voice.
Oh, I see. I've been coming to these things since 2007, 2006.
This is my first one. So do you have any advice for me? What would you say?
Go to bed.
Yes.
Drink water and go to bed.